Interrompemos esse podcast para perguntar: quem você quer ser?
Designer, engenheira,
pedagoga,
administrador.
Quer saber? O Senac EAD é nota máxima no MEC. Tem cursos de diversas áreas, com conteúdo elaborado por especialistas do mercado e professores mestres e doutores. Ainda tem o Senac Carreiras, conectando estudantes a vagas de emprego em todo o país. Saiba mais em ead.senac.br/graduação.
The Flashing Girl from Flushing, the nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
Miss Fine.
Wow, what a great theme song we have. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Oh, Mr. Sheffield, a podcast about 90s TV series The Nanny, starring Fran Drescher. Not the podcast, the show stars Fran Drescher. The podcast stars me, Sean DePasquale, along with...
Doria Sheffield.
That's right. And
we're the professor and Marianne of this podcast.
But you're the professor and I'm Marianne.
Obviously.
Yeah, because you're the smart one.
And you look so cute in pigtails.
I do. I look perfect. This is season 2, episode 23. A Kiss is Just a Kiss, which is, I can only assume, taken from the song of the same name. Is the song called A Kiss is Just a Kiss?
I think so. Maybe something we should have checked beforehand.
Well, anyway, you know, that song, A Kiss is Just a Kiss.
It might be called Just a Kiss.
Is but a smile. That's, what is that? Is that Sleepless in Seattle they use that song?
I don't know.
We should have done any research.
I mean, I didn't know you were going to be, just putting me on the spot like this. I didn't. But also, we were just talking before we started recording. This episode and the next they're horny episodes.
Super horny.
Man,
Kiss
get
is Just a
ready.
Kiss is the song is called As Time Goes By, and it is by Dooley Wilson. And he is the guy that you might remember from Casablanca, who says, who's the piano player. They go, play it again, Sam, and he plays the song on his piano. That's who wrote the song.
Wow, I had no idea.
Yeah, Herman Humpfield.
Appropriate again.
Perfect for this episode.
Well, and so this episode very quickly establishes. I'll first say this is the episode where Fran wins a kissing contest involving Billy Ray Cyrus.
I have so many thoughts on this episode.
I know. Well, and this causes a lot of tension between Fran and Maggie, because Maggie is the one who wanted to win. So this episode starts with establishing that Billy Ray Cyrus is having a kissing competition at Tower Records.
Which, okay, let's back up.
I just wrote "Wow, times have changed," if that's where you're going.
Let's back up a second. Billy Ray Cyrus is Miley Cyrus's dad, for anyone that doesn't know. Which I imagine there might be people that don't know, because he's kind of irrelevant now, you know?
I mean, I literally have the note later in this episode where I was like, I first learned who Billy Ray Cyrus was as, Miley Cyrus's dad, which really dates me.
Interesting. Yeah, see, and to date myself, I knew who Billy Ray Cyrus was because I was alive in this time period, and he was pretty famous. Like, he was like a pretty big deal. He was one of those... You know how like every once in a while country has like a breakout guy who like everyone like all of a sudden knows. You're like, why do I know this guy? I don't listen to country music. Like that was Billy Ray Cyrus in his time. He was like, hot. Like he was very sexy guy. That was always like, from my recollection as a non-country music person, he was like, women liked him because he was like, I don't know, like country, like he had like a long mullet.
He was like, I was going to say, he certainly was rocking a pretty impressive mullet in this.
Yeah, but that was like the style, as was the style at the time. Yeah. And he was like he had like one song that was like, that got like regular radio airplay.
Well, and I am sure, there are some listeners who are either huge fans themselves or grew up in a household where their parents were fans. And the fact that I only knew of him initially through Miley Cyrus is probably like infuriating, but that was, my experience with it. Yeah. But he's hosting a kissing competition, and the winner will get to be on the cover of his new album. And apparently it sounds like they make it seem initially like this is targeted at teenage girls, which is like an extra layer of just bad. We just don't do that anymore. We don't do kissing competitions.
I wrote the premise. I literally wrote the premise is so fucking cringy. It's like, why are all these, my notes read, are all these girls there to kiss Billy Ray Cyrus? How old is this man? Is he just kissing teenagers? And then I had to Google it. He was 32 when they shot this episode.
Well, and then we'll get to this, but later in the episode, when Mr. Sheffield finds out that basically Fran kissed him, his big complaint is like, Miss Fine, this was a competition for teenage girls. How could you? Like, she's at fault for being a grown woman kissing a grown man.
We start with a tongue wrestling joke.
Yes.
Which was really cute, honestly. They're like in the kitchen, right? And we're sort of getting all this setup of there's going to be a kissing contest and this and that. And
Maggie's like very, true to Maggie. It's like, I could never, I can't enter even though I want to, because like I could never compete with all the gorgeous girls in my school. And Fran is like, no, you're beautiful. You're wonderful. You should do this, which again, it's so bittersweet because it's so great. She's building her confidence, but to go kiss a full grown man. But yes. And that's when, Fran says something along the lines of like, ooh, I used to win lots of kissing competitions in my day, a lot of tongue wrestling in cars. Or she says something like that. And Gracie's like, you mean thumb wrestling? And Fran's like, yeah, thanks for correcting me. Well, then we established that Maggie has yet another new boyfriend named Sean. But at least they're kind of self-aware about it because no sooner does she say that, someone's like, who's Sean? What happened to Peter? I think like Niall says that, like, and everyone is like, gosh, she's really just goes through these guys. And Fran even says, oh, Peter, he got a bad haircut. He'll be back in 2 weeks.
Do you think that's was that like an in-joke?
Like they wanted to keep that actor around, but he got a bad.
Or like, was that a joke at Peter Mark Jacob? Like, do you think he had like a bad haircut that week and they were just like busting his chops?
Oh, no.
That was what I thought. I was like, I wonder if that was like they named, like, I think.
Possibly. I don't know. I didn't read it as a little dig at Peter Mark Jacobson's hair. I actually thought that maybe the actor who played Peter got a bad haircut. And the joke was like, oh yeah, we'll bring that actor back.
Have we met Peter? Who is that? Is that the boy?
Isn't the Gap guy?
Oh, maybe.
But here's the thing. We both might be reading way too much into this. And the joke just might be that, teenage girls are fickle and teenage love is fickle. Yeah. And then the thing about this new boyfriend, Sean, is he has a very, very similar haircut to Maggie. It's like, It's like blonde middle part down to his ears, which was in fashion at the time. Yeah. So then we get this horribly, horribly cringy moment where Mr. Sheffield comes in and he only sees the boyfriend from behind because the boyfriend's sitting at the kitchen table and he leans down, kisses him and just gently and is like, how's my little darling? It just was so, I was just so, but so it was just a funny beat where, then he realizes he kissed his daughter's boyfriend.
There's also a line about Fran is like, she's like, lamenting about all of this. And she says something about like, I guess I'm just going to have to go back to having impure thoughts about Judge Ito, which was like, again, so 90s specific.
That's one of my favorite, that's listed as one of my favorite lines where basically, Maggie is like, the second her boyfriend walks through the door, they start like lip locking and Fran's like, ugh. And meanwhile, I'm over here having impure thoughts about Judge Ito. Because, basically
who was the judge of the O.J. Simpson trial.
Yes. And at the time, people did have a lot of respect for him, but it's a very funny line in context and probably very meaningless outside of context. Yeah. But so Maggie, on Fran's kind of encouragement, announces that she's going to enter this kissing contest. Yeah. And both her new boyfriend and Mr. Sheffield are totally outraged. They say she can't do it. Mr. Sheffield forbids it. And then, Maggie and her boyfriend walk out and Fran kind of works her reverse psychology magic where, Mr. Sheffield's like, oh, Miss Fine, I'm sure you're going to say I was being too harsh on Margaret. And Fran's like, no. I mean, I actually agree with you on this one because, you saw how upset, her boyfriend got. If she did that contest, like they'd definitely break up and we'd never see him again. So Mr. Sheffield's instantly like, you know what? Like, it's not that big a deal. All her friends are doing it. She can do the contest. So that establishes that sort of like first act plot point that then Fran and Maggie are, later that week are going to this competition. And then we cut to Fran and Maggie in line at Tower Records, which leads to this really great bit where after Maggie kind of like goes ahead in line and Fran sort of stands back to let her go, she starts literally sabotaging all these other girls on Maggie's behalf. And she literally goes right up to like this super hot girl in line and she's like, I'm from Mobile Records. Guess what? Don't tell anyone, but you already made the cut. You don't have to stand in line. And then gives the girl a fake address.
She gives her, so she says, I'm from Humana Records, which is very funny. Humana. And then she gives her 1313 Mockingbird Lane, which is where the Munsters live.
So, okay, here's what I was going to say. When she goes, go to a 1313 Mockingbird Lane and asks for Herman and Lily, and like the audience has a huge laugh. But as soon as she said Herman and Lily, I realized she was sending them to the fake address of the Munsters. But the audience started laughing right when she said 1313 Mockingbird Lane. So when you think of the Mustards, like, do you know their address?
Everyone knew their address. It was like featured in the opening of the show. And when they tried to reboot the Munsters in like the early 2000s, they literally called the show Mockingbird Lane. It was like well known enough that that's where they lived. That So 1313 Mockingbird Lane was their address and was very well known at the time. But the show was just old enough at the time of The Nanny that it made sense that a teenage girl wouldn't necessarily get that reference, Because I was watching that show on like reruns and shit, and I was a weirdo who was into monsters, so I was like, this is great.
I know.
But like most of the people my age at the time did not care about them. Like, and we're like, why are you watching that? It's old and in black and white,
Okay. Well, that was interesting because like I knew obviously Herman and Lily Munster, but I didn't realize that was their address. But I just forgot, But so that happens and it's very funny, and we get that little spark of how Fran is good at sabotaging for competitions, which she's referenced to a lot over the course of these 2 seasons. But so then Maggie comes running back out and she's just like, oh my gosh, Fran, it was amazing. It was so fun. Like, you have to try it. You have to try it. Like, he's so cute. And at first Fran like resists and she's like, no, this is a game for the young, like blah, blah, blah. And then, finally she's like, you know what? Like, when was the last time I even had a kiss? So she decides she's going to go do it, just for a fun little lark that day.
And then we cut to back at the house, and the Maggie and Fran walk in, and of course Maggie is furious because Fran won the contest, and Fran is like, it's cute. She's like trying to downplay it a little, but she's also clearly very proud of herself. So she's like. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm just great, Yeah,
like, I don't know. I just can't control my mouth. It has a mind of its own. And so Maggie runs upstairs. She's so upset. And Mr. Sheffield finds out, and he is incredulous. Like, he's not angry at first. He's literally incredulous. He's like, this also is it's just revealing of the times where he's like, I'm sorry, there's no way you actually won. They were looking for teenagers, Miss Pine.
Yeah. Yeah, the problem is never this 32-year-old man is making out with teenagers across the country to find. The thing is the kissing had nothing to do with what they were even going to do, these girls. They were just going to it was just a photo shoot for an album cover. So why did they have to kiss him? It makes no sense.
But he's literally like, there must be a misunderstanding. Like
I almost would have bought it if it was like, show your boobs to Billy Ray Cyrus so he could put you on his album cover, because at least that's like judging how they look.
I think she's supposed to kiss him on the cover of the art. But anyway, Fran is outraged and indignant, and she's like, I won based on my kissing abilities. And he like literally almost laughs in her face, and he's just like, it is impossible. There is just no way that you beat out hundreds of gorgeous younger women based on just a kiss. And she's like, oh, yeah. And he's like, yeah.
And she's like, you really think that? And he's like, I do. And she's like, well, and he's like, what? And then she throws him onto the couch and she straddles him and she makes out with him.
Whoa. I just went en fuego, sexiest kiss on the show thus far. It was, and then also they cut to commercial. So for a second, you're like, wait, how far is this going? Like, where are we going to come back to?
Because it's not just, we've seen them kiss before and we've seen them do the whole, like, you know, I'm mad. And then they kiss. But like, she like straddles him and like puts the moves on. And you're like, Mr. Sheffield 100% has a boner right now. Oh. That's weird. But like in the context of the show,
clarify. Wait, I'm just going to clarify. We don't see a boner.
No,
we're just saying he definitely would. You know, if you could see that angle, he would.
Yeah, he's clearly attracted to her, and he's very repressed. And I feel like, you can't escape the scene without going like, oh, they're implying that he's turned on.
Whoa. Because then we come back from commercial.
And they're still kissing.
Still kissing. They finally separate. And, you know, Mr. Sheffield is totally dazed. He has her lipstick all over his face. There's literally a moment where like he doesn't even move. He's just like sitting there. And then he kind of comes back to reality and he stands up and he starts like wiping the lipstick off his face. And she starts reapplying hers in the mirror and like redoing her makeup. And he's just like, I like, albeit aside, like, I forbid you to do this cover shoot. You know, he's like, I'm a public figure and I just can't have the person who raises my children on some sexy album cover. And Fran,
she's like, that's all I am to you.
He's like, I can't have my nanny on an album cover. And she's like, a nanny, that's all I am to you. And he's like, well, yes. And she's like, yeah, okay.
she goes, you got me on that technicality.
But then she's like, you know, she's like, I'm not even planning to do it anyway. And he's like, wait, you're not? Like, he's super confused. And she's like, oh, don't you get anything? She's like, your daughter is at a very sensitive age. She has a very fragile self-esteem. Like, this whole thing could destroy her. Is that what you want? And he's like, what? No. And he's like, I'm confused. What are we even arguing about? And she's like, men don't get anything, or like whatever it was. And she like runs up the stairs and he's like super confused. But we established that, you know, just because Fran won, she had no intention of going through with this. It was just a nice little ego boost. Yeah. So the next scene is it's Val and Fran at Tower Records, and Billy Ray comes out with his manager, and Fran basically breaks it to him that, you know, she really can't do this. There is an Emily Bronte joke, which I actually don't believe Fran would make in the world of the show.
Who's Emily Bronte?
Okay, so she wrote Wuthering Heights. She was one of the Bronte sisters, who are these three sort of, I want to say it was the 1800s, but I might be so wrong about that. It came out in 47. Okay, yeah.
It came out in 1840. It was first published in London in 1847.
Yeah. So basically, the Bronte sisters were these three English sisters who famously each took to writing because they had like a alcoholic brother who kept gambling all their money away or something. So in this very just almost seemingly unbelievable real story, they were like, well, we need to support our family somehow. I guess we'll just write these novels. And then they each wrote an extremely, extremely famous novel. It's Wuthering Heights, Jane Eyre. And then the fact that I can't remember the third one's less famous, but I should still know. But anyway, so
it's Anne, Emily, and Charlotte.
Yes, and Anne
I gotta
wrote
say,
the least famous one.
Anne looks like the hottest one, so it makes sense that she wrote the least, because she probably was just like, I'm hot, girls. You guys are weird looking.
And I think there's definitely only portraits of these women, so that's also what there's a
great portrait on Wikipedia of them. And in the picture, there's like this weird splotch in the middle of them. And it notes the three Bronte sisters in an 1834 painting by their brother, who later painted himself out.
I see it. I'm looking at it. Yes.
Yeah, it's so funny.
Anyway, so there is a joke in this scene where, you know, they first meet Billy Ray Cyrus. And then she goes, "Hi, Mr. Cyrus." And then she goes, "If you married Emily Bronte, her name would be Brontosaurus." Sorry, Bronte Cyrus.
Yeah.
And I was like, cute joke, but I don't know if in terms of what we've established about Fran's interest in school, I don't know if she would have known who Emily Bronte was.
But when did the Wuthering Heights movie come out? Yeah, that was 1992. So
Okay.
And it was Ray Fiennes and Juliette Binoche, and it was like a pretty big released movie because like I remember the movie because I never read the book. I did not care, but I saw the movie. So and that was 92, and now this season we're like in 93, right? So
okay, she could have been
95. Like, this episode aired May 3rd, 1995. So yeah, I think she could have made it from it was in the cultural zeitgeist standpoint. Like she probably never read the book, but she knows like the lady because they've been talking about it for 2 years now.
Okay,
you know?
Okay, all right, I can buy that.
I don't know. Yeah, I'll let that. We'll let that one slide.
Okay. Point to Fran.
Yeah.
But so, you know, and they're like his Billy Ray Cyrus's manager. He's like, Fran, are you sure? Like, we were so excited about this. You were so perfect. And she's like kind of like being wooed by this. He's like, you know, we saw you and like we instantly knew you were the girl. And she's kind of like giving in. He's like, because you know, all those younger girls, they just make Billy Ray look old. You make him look young. And it's literally like her face falls. Billy Ray Cyrus, trying to smooth the situation, goes, well, you know, we just felt that you specifically being on the cover with me would appear to, you know, a broader set of women. And the manager goes, yeah, older broads. And so, you know, Fran, this just clearly really like, you know, kind of crushes her. It's really tough. And she's like, well, you know, I'm sorry. Well, my decision is final, even though she's clearly like so unhappy about this. And she's like, we'll be on our way. And then she's like, come on, Val, help me carry this on the bus. And they take this huge, giant Billy Ray cardboard cutout with them as they exit.
Chegou a melhor parte do podcast. É hora de provar a melhor Coca-Cola. A Coca-Cola sem açúcar. O sabor irresistível da Coca-Cola, sem açúcar e igualmente refrescante. Coca-Cola sem açúcar. A melhor escolha.
And then we cut to this scene at the mansion where Niles, he literally walks in with groceries and like the fridge door is open. And the way that this kitchen is set up, like you can't see behind the fridge door when it's open. And he's like, children, how many times have I told you not to leave the refrigerator door open? And he closes one side of it. And we see that it was just Fran sitting in a chair with a turkey leg in her mouth.
Which she then puts into her bathrobe pocket.
Yeah, she's in a bathrobe. She's clearly distraught. And she's like, oh, Niles. And she, you know, kind of like tells him what happened. And at one point he's like, Miss Fine, like you're still young. What are you, 32, 34? And she's like, she's like, she was like, you better like, she basically says like, you know, you better be careful or like you're going to get this turkey leg up your butt or like something that. Where she's super, and, you know, and Maggie comes in. And Maggie actually, in a very sweet and mature gesture, like apologizes to Fran and was like, you know, Fran, I'm sorry I reacted that way. The better woman won. And Fran's like, oh, Maggie, the only contest I won is like who's most likely to try to pass off a liver spot for a coffee stain. And she's like, they chose me because I was old. She's like, your only crime was that like you were beautiful, and like gives her a big hug and sends her on her way. And then Fran actually gets an entire pizza delivered. And Niles is like, Miss Fine, dinner's in an hour. And she's like, I know. That's why I ordered thin crust. And she just like goes upstairs with a turkey leg in her mouth and a pizza box in her arms. And, you know, she's just
gonna eat her feelings.
Yeah. And Cece comes in and is like, Niles, like, what's wrong with Nanny Fine? And Niles reveals
He's like, I couldn't tell you. And she goes, tell me what's going on or I'll just die. And he goes, you say it, but you don't mean it.
Yes. So he ends up telling her, but only because he knows she's going to go run and tell Mr. Sheffield, you know, in some misguided attempt to sort of make herself appear better than Miss Fine in her eyes. But, you know, he secretly knows that this is just going to somehow like push Mr. Sheffield and Fran closer together. So Cece goes running into Mr. Sheffield's office and is just like, Nanny Fine's old. Mr. Sheffield's like, what? Like, what are you going on about? And she says what happened. And Mr. Sheffield instantly feels terrible for the way he had insinuated, you know, that she was too old to win. And he, you know, he knows how hurtful this might be to her. So he's, you know, kind of like in his office, worried about Miss Fine. And then Cece, she literally is saying how, you know, it made so much sense because there's no way someone like Miss Fine could win with a kiss. And she's like, you know, because a kiss needs to be passionate. It needs to be, you know, blah, 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 blah. And then she's like, and most importantly, like well-timed. And what she doesn't realize while she's talking is Mr. Sheffield has moved to grab his briefcase while Niles has moved to where Mr. Sheffield was standing to tidy something up. So she, because she hadn't been looking in that direction, goes well-timed. She turns, she grabs Niles.
Did she say well-timed or spontaneous?
Oh, sorry.
It's spontaneous, right? She's like, it needs to be spontaneous. And she thinks she's like being like real clever. And then she like grabs the person next to her thinking it's Mr. Sheffield and plants a big old kiss on Niles. And it's hilarious.
And she pulls back and the look on her face is like, ugh.
Yeah, she's like the Irma God picture. Like she's like, and then she freezes like that. And it's a good, she's great, man. We sing the praises of her all the time, but she's genuinely hilarious.
So and Niles just goes, was it as bad for you as it was for me? And then Mr. Sheffield goes, you know what? I'm going to go upstairs and check on Miss Fine, and just leaves. Yeah. And she's like, no, don't go. And of course the plan completely backfired. Yeah. And then we go and we have this delightful scene. I thought this was just perfectly done and executed where
it is, except there's one line that's so dirty.
Is there?
Yeah. Okay. He's like, you're a really good kisser. And she's like, yeah. And he's like, yeah. He's like, the passion, the something, the suction. And she goes, yeah, Danny used to call me his little dirt devil, which I was like, oh.
I just thought it meant with kissing. I didn't even, but you're right. But it could have been other places. Basically, so she's lying in bed with her pizza in her bathrobe, and there's a knock on the door, and he's like, Miss Fine, may I come in? And she's like, oh, 1 second. And she hides the pizza. And then she lies on her pillow as if she's just been there the whole time. Yeah. And he comes in and sits next to her, and he's like, first of all, he's like, Miss Fine, like, will we be seeing you at dinner tonight? I can't have my favorite nanny wasting away. And she really goes, oh, I don't think I could possibly eat. But then, you know, she kind of says that she's just, you know, really depressed and it's really hard for her. And he very, very sweetly, and she's like, you know, I don't think there's anything you could say that could cheer me up right now. And he's like, well, can I just say that, like, I don't understand, you know, the American obsession with age. He's like, in Europe, a woman only gets like more beautiful and more, you know, seductive as she ages. And he's like, you know, especially a earthy, you know, what does he say? He's like an earthy, like interesting, intriguing woman like you know, with a strange, and he's like, you know, with a strange allure. And he's like, and you know, and if I might be so bold, like, you're one heck of a kisser, Miss Fine. And you know, and he says this really nice thing, which is like, no, like, women get more beautiful as they age and mature, and there's nothing you should feel self-conscious about. Yeah. And she's literally like, oh, Mr. Sheffield, like, here I was thinking nothing could cheer me up, and you've just like completely turned my day around. She's like, and he's like, what? And she's like, I could just kiss you. And he literally like takes his glasses off.
He like puckers up. He's like ready for it. Yeah.
He's like, oh, I mean, I couldn't possibly deny a lady like a kiss. And then she ends up kissing him on the forehead, which, you know, was very sweet.
And he looks sad. He looks genuinely like, oh yeah.
He wanted another one of those Fran dirt devil kisses. Yeah. And she, you know, and then she just goes, good to know I still got it. And it just freeze frames on her looking really satisfied.
Yeah. And interestingly, no post or no credits scene this episode.
Yeah.
It just goes right to the credits. I was like, oh, all right.
I know. I've gotten used to them. Like there could have been a funny,
usually, like, I thought there was going to be a Billy Ray Cyrus button, because usually when they have a guest star, the button is like that person comes back and does like one funny little jaunt, you know. But
yeah, that's true. There wasn't one in this, but it was, you know, it was a really sweet, really fun episode that is both like entertaining and gives, you know, it gives us that taste of what you want and need every now and then, which is the Mr. Sheffield, Fran brewing romance, but also the thing that makes it work, which is putting a little firm barrier it's like at the end, which is the kiss on the forehead. And, it's like clearly she's not really getting what he's putting down. And
they have to keep being, they have to continue to be two ships. I mean, as we talked about with when our interview with Peter, the show ends when they get together, and they were very aware of it. We now can confirm, they were well aware of that in the writer's room the entire time, which is like, as soon as we get these two people together, the show is over. Like, because what do you do? Which I'm so excited to get to the later seasons, because it makes it, with that context, all like, cause we've talked about like the show gets like a little off the rails later on. And it's like, well, yeah, because, the writers were like, well, that's it. Like, now they're married. Now what do we do? Like, there's no sexual tension here now, because like they're a married couple. They just go and do it at night when they want to. Like,
I mean,
that's how marriage works.
That's, hey, you gotta make it interesting in other ways, which is actually probably accurate,
Yeah, totally. Well, accurate to marriage too.
Yeah. So should we move on to our segments?
We should get to segments. And now, segments.
So, segments.
Yeah, no, I think we should move on to segments.
We can move on to our segments.
And now, segments.
Segments with Sean and Toria. We should do a special. Actually, no, I like our segment songs. So we're going to do a special remix.
I thought about it. I thought about like, new year, but it's not for the listeners because we put these out continuously and there was no like break for them. It would make more sense if I'm going to do it. It'll be with season 3. We'll do like a season 3 refresh.
You know what? Every single time any podcast does that, I always just go, I miss the original. So I say let's not buy into that.
True. Okay. Well, we could put it to a vote too.
That's true. Okay.
If you listen and you want us to remix our songs, tell us. And if you don't tell us, leave it alone.
I was going to say, you put a new one in, and then when we release that episode, we put a poll up on social and say, do you like this? Should we keep it?
Yeah, but then I got to make one for people to be like, we hate it. I put in all the time to make it. And then I'm like, do you guys like it? They're like, no, use the old one.
When you laugh so hard that no sound comes out, like I was like, no one's even gonna know how hard that made me laugh for a second because there was just no sound. Yes.
You're like, oh, it'll be easy. You'll just make a song and then we'll just have people vote if they like your hard work or not. Like, no, I don't want to do that.
It was such a callous and ignorant.
It's so funny. Yeah.
No, Sean, make the song.
Make a funny song. Dance, monkey, dance.
No, because it's the kind of thing where it's like, I actually do know the kind of work that goes into that. So the fact that I just so willy-nilly threw it out there is what made me laugh.
You're a good boss. You're tough.
But okay. But so favorite lines and moments. This is all after our regularly scheduled theme song, which we all love. We already mentioned the Judge Ito joke. I really liked when after Fran comes in and announces that she won the contest and Mr. Sheffield is angry at her. He says something like where he's like, don't you think you're going a little overboard on the hyperbole? And then she sniffs her wrist and goes, I'm wearing Obsession.
I also like that. Yeah, I like that. It's a good line.
Yeah.
And also just the concept that there's a perfume called Hyperbole is really funny.
And that she wouldn't know why. It was funny.
Yes.
And then also in that same fight when they're yelling back and forth and she kind of says something where he's literally just like, I've like so lost the thread of what we've been fighting about.
Yeah.
Was this one where
I think this might be one of mine.
Yeah, where she's like, and then your daughter's self-esteem will be ruined. Is that what you want? And he goes, all I want right now is to be in a pub talking about none of this with a lager.
With my hands wrapped around a tall lager.
Yes.
And she goes, She goes, a logger? Do the kids know that you're considering an alternate lifestyle? And he's what?
But the thing is, there's like a beat. It's not like she's trying to make a joke out of it. She's very confused. It takes her out of the argument. She's like, a logger? And there's like, she's doing all these mental calculations for a second. She goes, do the kids know you're considering it? Like with true concern. And he's like, it's a beer.
And she's like, well, speak English next time.
Yes.
It's a real good, like, who's on first moment.
Mm-hmm. I also had a line that you brought up, which was Cece going, tell me, if you don't, I'll die. And Niles going, you say it, but you don't mean it.
Another good Cece Niles exchange is after she realizes that he knew that this would drive Mr. Sheffield to Fran's arms. And I think even after she's kissed him, she's like, wait a minute, you knew that I would come running up here and I would tell him all of that. Like, you knew I would do all of that. And he's like, And then she goes, my mental health is just a sick game to you, isn't it? And he goes, rack 'em up, let's play again.
Yes.
It's so good.
Good. The way, we didn't talk about this before, but when she runs to go tell Mr. Sheffield, he also runs because he sort of wants to be there to like see it, or at first you think maybe to like kind of make sure she doesn't do anything like really mean. And they both get to the door at the same time, and they just try to squeeze through shoulder to shoulder in it's very funny physical comedy.
It's good. It's really good.
And then for the Yiddish, I didn't clock any Yiddish, but I tried to see if there was a Yiddish term for like spinster or old maid, and I couldn't find one, which I thought would be kind of easy for some reason. Like,
is there not?
Maybe I wasn't using like I typed like old maid, I typed spinster. Like maybe there is another way of old, like unmarried. Maybe it would just be unmarried woman in Yiddish, but that doesn't really necessarily make you think she's old. Unmarried woman.
I'm looking it up. Hold on. No, not really.
Oh wait, I think I might have seen some. Yeah, it was like, again, harder to find than I expected. I thought it would be like a very like easy term.
Right.
My thought is like, okay, older traditional culture, there would probably be a word for spinster, but oh well. So nanny trivia, I don't really know where this information comes from, but I'm going to take it as true because that's the type of person I am. Yeah. It says the costume designer would often put a secondary character in the same exact shade of color and even often the same pattern as Fran when sharing a scene with her, perhaps to indicate that they were in close harmony. Here, Maggie's like butter yellow Angora sweater exactly matches Fran's pastel yellow bathrobe in their end scene, like when they embrace, maybe signaling that they've made up and all is forgiven. And I wrote, I haven't really noticed this, but I'm going to kind of watch out for it now. Because it's in trivia. That could just be something that somebody noticed and then they decided that's what it meant.
And what's funny is as try as they might, like every single episode, Maggie looks more and more like Cece.
I know.
It's like she just looks like Cece's daughter at this point. Like, and in the first scene, I thought it was Cece for a second.
And they have the same exact haircut.
Everything. They look so much alike. It's crazy. Mm-hmm. Well, that's interesting. I mean, I can buy that, like as something a costumer would do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna look out for it now.
Yeah, me too. And who's the Fran or the Cece?
So,
you would definitely enter a kissing contest.
With my fear of getting something, no, I'm not gonna. I won't even. Well, there was a phase when I was trying on a lot of makeup at Sephora without really putting alcohol on it, which you're not supposed to do.
Okay, pre-COVID, would you enter a kissing contest?
No, because I don't want to get like a cold sore. But,
fair. Yeah.
Here's the thing. That's a good point.
That's also why you can't be an actress.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of. But yeah, that's the only reason.
That's it. That's one thing.
I think that I don't like to touch people. Neither of us like to touch people that we don't know very well. Like I would just have no interest in that. But my take on this was, I related to Fran a lot because, you know, I'm 34. So even watching this episode when Niles goes, oh, like, you're not that old. What are you, 32, 34? And she's literally like, watch it, mister. I'm like, oh, yeah, that sucks. Like, my age is old enough for people to be offended that they are that age. And I wrote, it's shitty when you don't feel old, but you realize people are seeing you as like kind of old.
Yeah.
Welcome
to my world.
Yeah. But again, no one's saying this to Mr. Sheffield or Niles or to all the older men. Like, this is a very, like, in our culture, it is like a woman problem.
It's a woman problem. Yeah, definitely. Don't you feel like societally though, that's shifting a little bit? Where like, at least in pop culture, I feel like,
who knows? It's an insidious problem. And all I know is my bathroom is full of lotions and potions and I won't be seen in the sun. But so I related to Fran feeling shitty. If I would feel shitty if I won a contest and found out that's why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, I think anyone would feel shitty. It's as you pointed out, it's not like a guy problem, but I would definitely feel shitty if someone was like, you won a contest because we needed you to make this person look younger. I'd be like, aw, really?
I know.
Sucks.
Yeah.
All right, well, this was a good episode. This was like a really, really good episode.
Yeah, it was very solid.
We had a lot to talk about.
Yeah, we have a lot.
Yeah.
So much to talk about.
All right. Well, listen, folks, we'd love to stay and talk to you all day, but we can't. And you've probably arrived at whatever destination you're going to. Even if you're just sitting on your couch, you've arrived. You're here in the present and the show's over, but we will be back next week for another episode, another exciting, thrilling, sexy episode of The Nanny.
Get ready.
Bye.
Goodbye.
The Flashing Girl from Flushing. The nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
I go, Miss Fine.